Long before there was light in the universe, there was Knull, the King in Black, a primordial entity who ruled the emptiness before creation. So when the Celestials, which are godlike beings, dared to bring light and life into his precious darkness, Knull declared war. He was created from the dark living abyss, which is a primordial dark essence that originated from the primordial cosmic void, which existed before and between the iterations of the multiverse. To combat these celestial invaders, Knull created weapons out of this abyss, merging his own power with raw hatred to take the fight to these space gods. Due to his experimentations and creations, he became known as the god of the symbiotes. He himself, although, is a different entity altogether compared to his creations, which are many in number and forms. And so here in this video we will dive into the different species of these symbiotes and their evolution. So let's get to it. Number 1. The All Black is where it all started. Formed from Knull's own hatred and the living darkness, this was the first proto-symbiote, capable of absorbing the essence of gods and mortals alike. It had a life of its own, driven by an unending hunger for killing and destruction. Unlike the modern symbiotes that bond and communicate with their hosts, the All Black was a weapon with a singular purpose: to kill and devour. It was bonded to its wielder's very soul, feeding off of their darkness and molding itself to fit their desires. Its limit knows no bounds, as it has in the past even bonded with Ego, the living planet, turning him into the Necroplanet, and even with Galactus, making him into the Butcher of Worlds. The Necrosort is the firstborn and the most powerful of the proto-symbiotes. Then next we have Mr. E. So he was one of the earliest proto-symbiotes, an ancient primordial and distinct entity that is different from the Clintar. Unlike the modern symbiotes that shapeshift and enhance their host's physical abilities, Mr. E's form was more ethereal and spectral. This proto-symbiote was less about creating a partnership and more about controlling his host like a puppet on strings. Comprised of living darkness, Mr. E is capable of manifesting tendrils, wings and claws, and even become intangible, which is the distinct difference between him and the other symbiotes and other proto-symbiotes, as he can merge into surfaces like a shadow. He is also capable of producing offshoots to take over other beings and turn them into subservient shadow slaves that it can control. So yeah, Mr. E is one of a kind. And this brings us to another one-of-a-kind proto-symbiote that Knull created, who is called the Void Knight. So this proto-symbiote was created from the living abyss like the others, and was created in the symbiote throne world to enslave the time-displaced Silver Surfer and turn him into a soldier for the symbiote hive. It was one of the most favored creations of Knull, even though it didn't live long. While the symbiotes are seen as parasitic blobs, Mr. E as ethereal and shadowy, and the Necrosort as essentially a sword, the Void Knight manifested as a construct that draws inspiration from H.R. Geiger's Necronom murals, you know, the xenomorph designer. However, not much is known about him, other than that he bonded with the Silver Surfer, appearing as a demonic version with horns, and that he was killed by Ego's psionic beam, an energy beam. Then we come to the Symbiote Dragons. Now these proto-symbiotes are mass-produced and can also reproduce. So early in his crusade against the light brought by the Celestials, Knull discovered that he could create massive wyvern-like monsters from the living abyss. These Symbiote Dragons, far more powerful than the lesser symbiotes, serve as mounts and weapons of mass destruction, capable of annihilating gods and entire civilizations. Their living abyss could engulf planets or infect gods and mortals, converting them into Knull's soldiers. Their difference to normal symbiotes that would be later created are their resistance to fire and sonics. These dragons could form tendrils, blades, and spikes from the abyss, just like the symbiotes, and some like Grendel were directly linked to Knull, granting them near godlike powers. There are also instances of some of these symbiote dragons being able to breathe fire, which is contrast to the symbiotes who cannot tolerate fire. They can also fire other energy beams and spew out torrents of living abyss to infect those exposed, which makes them a very different kind of proto-symbiote. Then next we have the Exelon. So out of all the proto-symbiotes, the ones which were created just before and were closely related to the Clintar are the Exelon. They were one of Knull's failed attempts at creating a more adaptable symbiotic species. These parasitic creatures could not form a true bond with their hosts, instead consumed their souls, and so they were discarded by Knull in the exoteric latitudes of the universe. However, a lost group of Kree explorers stumbled into this region of space and were attacked by these Exelon, which bonded to them and were said to feed on their immortal souls rather than feeding on adrenaline and phenethylamine like how the other symbiotes do. It was because of this bonding that the Kree became a faction known as the Nameless, as once estranged from their souls, they lost all sense of time and sentience. Unlike the Clintar symbiotes, Exelons had no notion of communication. They were an invasive species driven by the need to feed on all life force. Then come the present-day symbiote species that includes the likes of Venom, Carnage, and others. These symbiotes were a later evolution in Knull's dark experiments. These beings could bond with hosts, form a mutualistic relationship that grants these hosts incredible abilities. Over time, they grew more independent of Knull's influence, developing morals, emotions, and even complex societies. They were only known as the Clintar after they rebelled against their creator and imprisoned him in the center of an artificial planet in the Andromeda Galaxy. After this, they became a collective consciousness that allowed them to explore the universe beyond Knull's oppressive reach. Unlike their proto-symbiote predecessors, Clintar symbiotes can communicate with their hosts and adapt their forms to suit the host's needs, but they were highly vulnerable to fire and to sounds of a certain frequency. Nevertheless, they are the most successful living abyss species, as they have spread across the multiverse, created a hive mind of incomprehensible scale, and have lived on for 1,000 generations, with Venom being the 998th, Carnage being the 999th, and Toxin being the 1000th generation of a same family tree. Then we come to the first evolved species, the Plague Symbiote. So this is a monstrous offshoot of the Clintar species, created from a Symbiote Dragon's spit. It's quite similar to the other Clintar with similar abilities and vulnerabilities. However, the Plague Symbiote can reanimate a corpse and form a symbiotic link with a dead body, which is different from the Clintar as they need living hosts. It feeds on the life force of people and appears as a humanoid zombie-like creature with a pink-purple aura. It's more aggressive, can absorb life, and can also teleport from one place to another, which shows that this is a completely different species. Then the second evolved species is Antivenom. Antivenom was created when Eddie Brock, suffering from cancer, volunteered at a feast center. Martin Lee, the founder of FEAST Feast, and the alter ego of the supervillain called Mr. Negative, used his powers to cure Eddie's cancer. During this process, Mr. Negative's energy accidentally merged with the remnants of the Venom symbiote still present in Eddie's bloodstream. These remnants fused with Eddie's white blood cells, creating a new evolved symbiote called the Antivenom, who has all the abilities of his predecessors and also new ones too. Antivenom possesses an extrasensory ability similar to Spider-Man's Spider Sense. This symbiote is capable of mimicking the appearance of any form of clothing, camouflaging with its surroundings, and even mimicking other people. It is immune to fire and to sound that other symbiotes are affected by, and can heal a person afflicted by radioactivity, parasites, diseases, and drugs. And so it's safe to say that Antivenom has evolved beyond the Clintar species. And now lastly we have the symbiote human hybrid, Dylan Brock, the son of Eddie Brock. He is something else entirely. Dylan is a hybrid of a human and symbiote with the codex of the hive mind embedded within him, a collection of genetic material from multiple symbiotes and their knowledge. This makes Dylan a living conduit to the symbiote hive mind, giving him unique abilities to control and communicate with symbiotes. Dylan appears to be a normal human, a little boy, but he's actually an incarnation of the Venom symbiote, granting him abilities similar to Knull. His unique powers include ESP, immunity to spider sense, invisibility, shape-shifting, night vision, Spider-Man detection, venomous fangs, resistance to telepathy, empathetic empowerment, energy transference, and absorption. Dylan can sense symbiotes and can forcibly repel or control them if they try to bond with him. He can also easily kill symbiotes threatening his life. As a hybrid, when he bonds with a symbiote, it severs the symbiote's connection to the hive and triggers an evolutionary process that enhances that symbiote's strength. So yeah, Dylan Brock is the next step in evolution. And with that, we end this topic on the different symbiote species and their evolution. Now, if you like this video, then watch this other one too. And do check out our channel for other dragon and monster and xenomorph and venom content. We might have things you haven't seen before. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.